Welcome to Mystery Miners Ghost Edition. I'm your host, Theo. Today we are going to be talking about the deaths at 423 Stockholm Street. The story is written by Reddit user The Dalek Emperor. So my spooky friends, sit back, relax, go grab a nice cup of tea, and let's get ready to get scared. I always knew there was something strange about our house on 423 Stockholm Street. I grew up listening to the sounds of scratching, moaning, and sporadic banging coming from the other side of my wall. When I was a child, I thought, hey, maybe there's a creature living on the other side of my wall. I assumed it was my friend. After all, it hasn't done anything to me, and it was there to protect me from my nightmares. But as I got older, I realized that it wasn't my friend at all. When I was 8, I finally broke down and told my parents about the creature living in my wall. I was terrified that it would come into my room one night and kill me. My mother rolled her eyes and told me it was just mice. She never listened to me anyway. My father agreed with her that it was animals, but he hugged me and told me he would protect me and not to be scared. So from then on, whenever I'd hear the noises, I would scream for my father, and he would come running into my room in less than a minute later to see what the matter was. I would point at the wall and cower. My dad would smile, bang on the wall with his fist, and say, "Quiet down in there, or else." The noise would stop. I'll give my dad a teary smile, and he would hug me. He was always my protector. I miss him so much now. When I was 16 years old, I was awakened in the middle of the night by an unearthly scream. The sound was so high-pitched and piercing that it sent shivers down my spine, and I screamed in terror. The scream stopped as suddenly as it had begun, but the eerie silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my heart pounding in my chest as my dad burst into my room, his hair disheveled and his eyes bloodshot with fear. He knew what I heard, but he tried to convince me that it was just an owl, a common bird in our neighborhood. But I knew the truth. I could sense that something was wrong, something my dad couldn't see. I begged him to listen to the walls to hear the sounds that were coming from within them. He sighed and reluctantly agreed, and we sat there in the darkness, listening intently. I needed my dad to believe me, to understand the danger that we were in. But the walls remained silent that night, and I didn't hear the creature again for a long time. My dad smiled at me, told me that he will protect me forever. After all, he did build the house himself. I sometimes did wonder if there was even an extra room behind my wall, but I just shrugged that idea off. A few months passed by and I decided to ignore the noises. I mean, I just had 1 or 2 years left at home before I head off to college. I have gotten used to the noises now, so I made the decision to just ignore the sounds, and I even started banging back at one point. If something could come through the wall, it would have already. But it took one evening to change everything and turned my world upside down. One cold autumn evening, as I was heading back home from a friend's house, my mother called me to come home immediately. This was strange, as my mother rarely ever acknowledged me. As I drove back to our neighborhood, I saw media vans, police cars, and SWAT trucks lining the streets. I had to park my car and walk the final 3 blocks to my house, tears rolling down my cheeks as I realized my street was the epicenter of it all. I knew what had happened before I even saw it. My dad was dead. It had finally gotten out and it had killed my dad. Ignoring the voices telling me to stop, I dodged in between the vehicles and ran through the crime scene taped to my house. There, I found the hall closet door open with all the jackets and sweaters pulled out of it. On the back wall of the closet, I saw another door. Stumbling into the closet, I went through the hidden door and found myself in a room I had always known it was there. But it wasn't what I thought it would be. The media called my dad the Skinner of Stockholm Street. And from what I saw in that room, it was a fitting name. There were all sorts of knives, metal devices, machetes, chains, and rolls of duct tapes. In the middle of the room, there was a flat table that was very clearly blood-soaked. But the worst of it all was the wall. My wall. Every inch of it was covered in carvings, but they weren't satanic or evil like I had thought. The carvings were words on my walls. Some of the words that were carved were, "Jacob, I love you. Tell my father I forgive him. Tell my daughters they were my world." Then the truth finally sank in. My father has murdered them all. According to the evidence file, there were over 60 messages carved into the wall, and I made myself read every single one. Those messages haunt me every night, and I realized I had spent 10 years tormenting whoever had carved them. Now the messages will forever torment me. I live in a hospital now, and I can still hear the scratching. Every time I close my eyes, I hear it. I haven't slept in a year, and my doctor says if I don't sleep soon, I'll die. I spend my days watching news coverage of my father's trial and my nights staring at the walls. Though I try every night, I can never fall asleep because I always hear the scratching, and I always will. Thank you for watching today's episode of Mystery Miners Ghost Edition. Make sure you catch us next week for another scary story on MI Radio.